The following is a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.
Crossed Flags, a racing podcast. It's your midweek fix for racing news and information. Brought to you by the Championship Racing Network. Now let's head trackside to join your hosts, Steve West and Matt Nicholson.
Welcome into the latest edition of Crossed Flags. I'm Steve West alongside Matt Nicholson and, of course, producer John behind the scenes helping us out, along with producer Molly. Appreciate them both. We're going to be very NASCAR heavy for this particular podcast. Coming up, of course, this weekend, we'll have news from all of the series that we cover on a regular basis, including some pretty cool news out of the world of drag racing in the fact that we've got a first-time winner here in the U.S. in one of the two major drag racing divisions. So a lot of good stuff that we'll have coming up this weekend of the big show. But right now I want to talk about a pretty serious accident. The problem began for Stewart Friesen really, I guess, on Friday night. We talked about this last Saturday morning in the fact that at IRP, he had a really good run. Stewart Friesen came home third, and then when they did post-race inspection, they determined that his truck was too low in the front and they DQ'd him. So he was credited with last place. And that was not the end of his troubles. It turned out it was the beginning of his troubles. Monday night, last night, as we record this particular edition of Crossed Flags live on this Tuesday, last night he had gone north of the border up to Quebec to run a short track, dirt track race, and unfortunately got himself into a pretty serious accident. The results of this accident left him with needing surgery. Let's just put it mildly. To be specific, his right leg is fractured and he has a compound fracture of his pelvis, which means at least 2 fractures, maybe more. And like I said, they're going to have to go in and they're going to have to perform surgery on this. So they may find out that there's more than what they just saw on the x-rays or the MRIs or whatever it is that they did to determine those particular problems. So Stewart Friesen, I'm not going to say his racing career is in jeopardy, but he's going to be sidelined for a while. You would know this much more because you're the driver.
He's simple way to put it, he is done for the year. And he may be done for a month or two starting in the next season.
So you think he can come back next year from this?
Yeah, it's going to take a while. Picture this one being the 2015 Kyle Busch level injury.
Right. He sat out the first, 8 races of that year, if I remember right?
First 12, I think.
12 races, okay.
Take that and multiply this by about 5. Because I watched the video of that crash multiple times, and I can arguably say I've never seen a modified. Now, I've seen sprint cars catch air like this, but I've never seen a modified or a heavier stock car, heavier dirt car, excuse me.
Right.
Catch air and fly like this car flew.
Now, to give them a little bit, because we can't play video here, and a still picture doesn't give the entire story here. This is a race that had a whole bunch of different entries, obviously. A lot of people's first reaction is going to be, well, did Stewart Friesen cause the wreck or did he just get caught up in it?
No, it wasn't anything that anybody did to cause a problem. Stewart he was on the high side of coming out of turn 2 at Drummond Autodrome, which in Canada it's coined the F1 of dirt. It is an extremely fast racetrack.
Okay.
For a dirt track. And I'll put it to you this way, for the ones that haven't seen it, take Eldora and times the speed by probably about 3.
Ooh.
And that's how much faster this track is.
That's a quick drive.
He was just on the high side, and he was going to make a clean 3-wide pass. And the right rear jumped the cushion. And when the right rear jumped the cushion to where it goes right up into the wall, the exit of turn 2 at Drummond, his right rear walked the wall, and it launched the car airborne.
Okay.
And when the car came back down, the rear clip hit the wall and knocked the fuel cell out of the car and the rear clip off, which had a quick fireball. But when he was he flipped. I think he was on his third flip going down the backstretch. Another car came in at full speed and hit him, and the car launched. I'm going to say probably a solid 10 to 15 feet in the air. And then when he landed, it landed right side up. But there was really the picture that was just shown. There was really the left side of the car where the driver's side car is, where the impact came in. That's probably he sustained the injuries that he sustained with his pelvis.
Okay.
But where that come in at, it looked like the open side of a sprint car, if you can picture that.
Yeah. The only thing that really comes to mind that I can equate this with, the way that you're describing it, might be the injury for Robert Wickens. And that was pretty much what ended IndyCar's run at Pocono, for example, when that car launches up into the air, gets into the catch fence, and when it lands flush on the concrete, or the pavement in this case. And that's what really has paralyzed Robert Wickens. The thing that may have actually benefited Stewart Friesen in this case is, number one, his car didn't come all apart and all he's left with is a tub. And number two, he's landing on a dirt track, which gives him, I'm sure it didn't feel great, don't get me wrong, but it's a little bit more cushioning than pavement.
Yeah, it's definitely way more cushioning than pavement. And then plus, some of the suspension parts were still attached. So that gave it some flex to be able to have just a little bit softer landing.
Yeah.
But yes, it was reminiscent to me of that Robert Wickens crash. But the way the car flipped, it reminded me too of the 2000 crash that Jeff Bodine had at Daytona in the trucks, the way the car was careening through the air.
I know what you're talking about. I remember that one too.
Yeah.
So our thoughts and our prayers go out to Stewart Friesen, his family as well, because this is going to be a long road back. It's going to be painful for quite a while. And truth of the matter is, it may be painful to a certain extent for the rest of his life. These are very serious injuries, especially to his pelvis, that we're talking about. And it's a long road back. So we wish him nothing but the best, as he will first undergo surgery, which he hasn't as of the time that we record this podcast. I think it's going to be scheduled for a couple more days from now. And then he begins the recovery process.
With his recovery for sure, he's going to have an extensive one, no doubt. But now my question is going to be is, who does the Halmar team, which Stewart is a co-owner of Halmar Friesen, who do they turn to finish out for the rest of the year? Because that truck is in the playoffs because of his win at Michigan. So they still have the ability to compete for the Owners' Championship. Now they're all but eliminated from the Drivers' Championship, even though he still got his playoff spot. He essentially is going to finish 8th in the playoffs by default. So,
and this, I say this only because I haven't looked into this. Medical waiver only counts for the driver; it doesn't count for the truck. So, in other words, Stewart Friesen, in other words, Stewart Friesen couldn't, for example, put you in the truck and you be in the playoffs on a medical waiver.
If there was a scenario which is outstanding, wishful thinking, but if Chris Halmar called me up and said, "Hey, could you drive this truck for the rest of the year for us?" And I would gladly, before he even finished his sentence, say yes, I would drive it.
Sure.
I would still be able to compete in the Owners' Championship in the Owners' Championship portion of the playoffs to get that 52 team their best possible shot to win in the Owners' Championship.
Right.
But I could not compete for the Drivers' Championship in place of Stewart.
Okay. Yeah. The waiver only affects the driver.
Right.
Okay. That brings us to another situation. I was not able to watch this race because I don't have access to the CW network. So Saturday during the Xfinity Series race, I didn't see this. I was alerted to it when Matt sent me a text and basically said that, one particular driver, Austin Hill, the 21 car for Richard Childress Racing, needed to be parked. And so I asked him about it, and he showed me the video. Now, again, we can't show you video here, but we can show you a still picture of what it is that he's talking about. This is late in the race. This is the battle for fourth place between three drivers. Two of them in particular is Eric Almirola and Austin Hill, and having a very nice front row seat is the Haas factory team number 00 of is that Sam Mayer? No, that's Sheldon Creed. I'm sorry.
Sheldon Creed.
Yeah. So this is a major problem here. As they go into turn 3, Eric Almirola admits that he got a little loose and got into Austin Hill and got Hill loose. Hill is all over the place. Looks like he recovers for a moment, and then all of a sudden, the video, at least on the surface, appears that suddenly he takes a sharp left, and you can see the result right here. He is starting to get into the right rear quarter panel of the number 19 driven by Eric Almirola. That number 19 car ends up going head first into the wall. And if we know anything about going head first into a wall, we know that can be, luckily it wasn't, but it can be a very dangerous thing. Eric Almirola got out of the car and he went on a pretty big rant. I've seen the quotes and I saw the video post of it, where he ripped into Austin Hill, said Austin Hill maybe even deserves a suspension for a race. NASCAR, for their part, when he came down under the yellow flag, they parked him for 5 laps.
With 8 laps to go.
With 8 laps to go, exactly. And this obviously ruined any chance he had for winning the race or placing anywhere really good. And when he found out, he was informed by his crew chief, I think, who said, you're going to be held for 5 laps due to reckless driving. And I'm going to edit this because, well, let's just say it's not safe for radio. And if it's not safe for radio, we're not going to put it on the podcast either, because we don't know who's watching and or listening. He goes, oh yeah, they can go blank themselves, blank NASCAR. That's blanking BS. I'm blanking sideways. I go to correct it back to the left. It gets locked. It gets locked to the left. We're going to come back to that. And I blanking run into the 19, which of course is Almirola. Well, let me start with that last part. I go to correct it to the left. It gets locked to the left. What might, as a driver, he be referring to in that particular case?
That car, I'll say this to start with, that car never locked left.
I don't argue that, but let's just take him at his word first.
The definition.
What might he mean by that?
The definition of a car locking in a certain direction is if let's say I'm in the 00. If I get loose and that car locks, whether it be to the left or to the right, that means that car is going to carry momentum to whichever direction it locks.
Okay.
All right.
No hope of recovery at all, is what you're saying.
No motor recovery. That means, in layman's terms, that means the front tires hook is called hooking. The front tires hook to the pavement, and it carries the momentum of that car. That's the definition of a car locking.
Okay.
All right.
So now that we've taken him at his word and defined that, now you, from the driver's perspective, because I can look at the video all day long and I can surmise all I want. And we can look, for example, at the picture that's up here, thanks to producer John for putting it up there in such big form. And we can guess, based upon what we see from his white gloves, we can take a guess from a still shot, but that's not the whole story. You being the driver, and this is why we love having the resident driver on the show, you have a different perspective from this entire video to give us a better idea of what more than likely happened behind the wheel of that car.
I can go on from now until 0 dark 30.
I'm sure you could.
Because one, the car never, when he immediately got on the radio and started pleading his case, that was an immediate sign of guilt. Okay. That's
okay.
One. Two, this is why I beg and beg and beg and beg and beg and just say it till I'm literally blue in the face. This is why you do not wear white or bright colored gloves in a car, because with the amount of 4K high definition cameras that are around the racetrack, when you have a situation like that, what is the first thing that you're going to look at? You're going to look at that hand placement.
Yep.
If you see that still shot right,
you're going to see still shots, which again, don't tell the whole story.
The still shot that you see right here on the screen, look at his right hand. His right hand is at about 1230.
Yep.
When your right hand is at about 1230, that means that car is going left.
Yes.
Where his case, in the words of Vincent LaGuardia Gambini, does the defense's case hold water? No.
Mona Lisa Vito said, no, it doesn't hold water.
Here's why it does not hold water. He got sideways at first at the exit of 3. When that race car, when that Chevrolet, I'm going to call it Camaro, when it set straight, this car set straight long enough to where he had control. Whether it was for a split second or two, he had time to have it controlled. But when you watch it from that angle in slow motion, his hands go back to basically the 10-2 position.
Okay. So that tells me that he's got it reset in control going straight.
Car's in control.
Right.
When you're on straightaways in these cars, you can hold these cars at 10. You can hold these cars at 10-2, like you do on a freeway or a highway or an interstate, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
But when you're going into corner entry, you can do what I call, and I watched Dale Earnhardt Jr. do this countless times on in-car cameras. When you go into corner entry, you can do what I call a hand slide and slide your hands over into a different position to where your hands are probably in a position, I'm going to say, of 8 and 12, to where you're pitching the car over in a corner.
Okay.
Before corner entry into 4, his hands went to about probably 8:30 and 12:30, which you see right there. He turned down into this car. There is no question. I could guarantee you Sheldon Creed would back every American citizen that had their eyes on this event would back up. Yeah, he turned down.
Okay.
Because once that car set straight after he caught it the first time, once it's set straight, every action after that right there is his words are irrelevant, because the action and the visual of what happened, which would probably match to what the SMT data is from the car. I want to see what the angle of the turn of the wheel was when that contact was made in this very image.
Sure.
And I can guarantee you it's probably going to be close to or equal out of the situation of when Bubba Wallace wrecked Kyle Larson at Las Vegas, when Chase Elliott hooked Denny Hamlin at Charlotte. It's probably going to be the same as when Austin Hendrick hooked Todd Dillon at Coda, but we're in a totally different discipline of racing here with Coda versus Indy, Vegas, and Charlotte. Totally different.
Agreed, but here's the situation that we've got. As of the time that we are recording this, we don't know what the penalty is. If there's going to be more of a penalty than just him sitting for 5 laps. They have the ability, NASCAR has the ability to sit him out for a race, which has other implications, but we'll get into some of those here in just a moment. The first implication is the most obvious one, in the fact that sitting him out for a race, you just mentioned, for example, earlier this year, Austin Cindric at Coda.
Mm-hmm.
They fined him. They didn't sit him. Is that a precedent, or is that a totally different situation in your mind? And would it be in NASCAR's mind?
Totally different precedent. Here's one. Because the discipline of racing that you're at with a road course versus a slower speed section of that road course versus higher speed disciplines that is Indianapolis, Las Vegas, and Charlotte, for example. You have 3 disciplines versus 1.
And that should be taken into account, or should it just be the fact that one driver hooked another?
Absolutely, it should be taken into account.
Okay.
Because Austin Cindric at COTA admitted to hooking Dillon, but they looked at the situation of slower speed discipline when you're coming out of turn 20 at COTA, coming up through the gears, versus running 100 at that part of the track right there. You're running every bit coming up to speed, getting through 4. You're at anywhere between 165 and 170.
Okay.
iRacing will prove that because I've done that very same thing. You're in the range of 165 to 170. All right. Again, 3 disciplines to 1. And Richard Childress, do not. I don't want to ever hear say, well, they didn't penalize. They didn't sit Austin out when he hooked Ty at COTA. COTA, Indianapolis. High speed, lower speed.
Okay.
Major difference.
Okay. And that's, I was going to bring that up, but you brought it up for me. So you feel like this is a much more serious situation. Higher speeds do make a difference as opposed to just going, hey, it's one driver hooking another, and therefore you've already set a precedent. So that's number one. Number 2, Denny Hamlin on his podcast, Actions Detrimental, he talked about this yesterday as we record live. And he basically said that if the data bears it out, he feels like that Austin Hill needs to be suspended. And obviously you agree.
Everybody's probably going to see that the data will bear out and show that he did.
Okay.
Because that car made a too much and too quick of a left hand, I'm going to call it a left hand abrupt move before you would be at the entry of the corner. Mm-hmm. 1, 2, you're at a lower angle going into the corner. If you follow what I'm saying, because cars are normally up against the wall, right there at the apex, at the short chute between each turn in Indianapolis. You're normally up against the wall, all right, unless you got a set up pass that you're setting up to get somebody. But as he's going in to make the pass, if you're looking at it like this, he goes, the front of the car darts.
All right.
He's not catching the car because a second before that car was in a straight caught phase. If you follow what I'm saying.
I do.
So their case doesn't hold water. And the visual is probably going to back up what the SMT data shows in the car. And he probably cost himself all of his playoff points from a suspension.
That is the ramification that I was just about to talk about, because he's in the playoffs. Yeah. He's got 3 wins on the year, all of them happening earlier this year. Plus you have all those playoff bonus points that you get from that, at least again, as of right now, before NASCAR hands down penalties. If he has a suspension, NASCAR rules state, and this covers all 3 top series of NASCAR when it comes to the playoffs, that they will allow a waiver for reason, which is a medical situation for the driver or the family of the driver. Missing the race for the birth of a child, which Denny Hamlin knows about because he did that already with Mexico City. Mm-hmm. The waiver does not have an exclusion for a suspension by a driver, meaning that in this year's iteration, the Kyle Larson rule, if a driver misses a race because of a suspension or missing a race because they are in another unapproved race, that's why we call it the Kyle Larson rule, then they lose all those playoff bonus points. So those 3 wins only serve to lock him into the playoffs. He gets no bonus points at that point in time. You go back down to the basement, which is 2,000. You don't have any cushion. And now all of a sudden, Austin Hill, who did exactly what he did last year, which is he came out of the gates hot at Daytona, Atlanta, in the first, 3-4 races of the year, or handful of races in the year. And since then, as the weather has warmed up, he's cooled off. And that's a bad way to be when you're going into the playoffs and you have zero cushion.
And you do something boneheaded like right hook a driver into the wall at high rate of speed at a fast track. You cost yourself, because guess what, Austin? Talladega's not in the early round. And it's some of your track record or the way you ran at some discipline of tracks. I now don't see you in a prime position to advance out of the early round.
And does this have bigger ramifications than that? In other words, if I'll put you in the case of Richard Childress, grand scheme of things, not being upset about whatever ruling might come down. Grand scheme of things. Let's say, for example, that you have a car available next year. Let's call it the 3 car. You finally decide that Austin Dillon is just not the guy, and you're done. And you've got 2 guys who are chomping at the bit down at your Xfinity Series level with Austin Hill and Jesse Love. This and what you've seen out of Austin Hill over the last, couple of years, you can be impressed with the number of wins that he's pulled off. But some of the other actions that you've seen, are you thinking that Austin Hill's ready to go, or are you actually going to look past Austin Hill and go to his teammate Jesse Love?
Honestly, that's kind of tough to say. But at the end of the day, because really and truthfully, every single individual, male, female, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, that has put a helmet on, locked in a 5-point harness, and started to switch on a car and rolled out onto a racetrack of that nature, they've had a moment similar to this.
Sure.
I'll be the first to admit I have. And I won't be bashful about it. I've had a moment. Have I right hooked somebody? No. But I've laid a fender to them and let them know, like, hey, I don't agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
I've had it happen to me because I made an inadvertent mistake. And my mistake was inadvertent. I've never deliberately hooked somebody. I've never deliberately turned somebody. It's been racing incidents. But I went to that driver and said, hey, that's on me. I messed up. I screwed up.
Mm-hmm.
I never said, yeah, I turned you. You deserve it. Absolutely not. That's something you don't do.
Okay.
Because all you're doing is invoking, you're sending the situation from DEFCON 5 to DEFCON 1 by admitting, yeah, I hooked you. That's what you're doing.
Right.
All right. But from an overall aspect of taking care of business on the racetrack without letting tempers come into play, if he was to make a move at a cup level, Austin would be the first person that I put in one of my cars.
Okay. All right. So this to you is not, it is a negative in the short term, but for you, it's not a negative in the long term.
Not really.
Okay. All right.
Yes, it's short-term negative for sure, but long-term, no, because he's got all of his sponsors that he has that he brought in for the car that's backed him through his whole career. Bennett, Global Industrial, and United Rentals. I don't see them going like, no, we're leaving just because of that. I don't see that.
Okay. And I say that because over the course of time, we have seen drivers who have come in and they've been model citizens, quote unquote model citizens. They don't really get into all the headlines there. We don't see them ruffling too many feathers. Jeff Gordon got under the skin of some people just because he won a lot. Jimmy Johnson was the same way. But you look right behind me here and you see 2 drivers, most specifically, DW and Tony Stewart. And both of them were known for being kind of hotheads, shouting off at the mouth, getting to the point where they made some enemies out on the track before they started to figure out how to graduate into it and not be as aggressive on the track and going and getting wins without necessarily being the bull in a china shop. Let's put it that way.
Sure.
And you feel like Austin Hill is beginning, if not fully there, obviously, but you feel like he can make that transition without much of a problem.
I think he can.
Okay.
I do think he can.
Okay. And I think that's the big key right there. Again, we may hear from NASCAR later on this afternoon after we get done doing this podcast. I think it'll probably be more likely tomorrow, Wednesday. And that means we'll revisit this when it comes to the big show once again. So if you're checking it out now, we will once again talk about this, and we'll give you the results, the ramifications, the after effect, if you will, of the particular ruling that comes out from NASCAR as soon as they give it. So make sure that you're tuned in on Saturday morning. That's again 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central Time, right here on CRN Live on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe. Feel free to comment down below. We love reading the comments too, and if it's a really good one, we may actually talk about that on the big show as well. Once again, our thanks out to producer Molly for helping us with our friends over at Jocks 94.5 YouTube TV. Of course, producer John, who is taking care of all the visuals and the audio that you see here. And on behalf of Matt Nicholson, I'm Steve West. Thank you for checking out this edition of Crossed Flags.
You've been listening to Crossed Flags, a racing podcast. For more content like this, subscribe to CRN Live on YouTube, and you'll be set to catch the 2-hour live show every Saturday morning at 9 Eastern, 8 Central.
This has been a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.